But before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, both past and present. This is Indigenous land and will always remain Indigenous land. So what you see wrapped around my head is not just a piece of material with colours entwined within it. It is a signifier of my faith. But this very signifier and all that it represents has been used and abused as a media and political tool. It has become the heart of media coverage on Islam, Muslims, and Muslim women, and has consequently weaved out hatred, racism, and fear within the Australian fabric, within the fabric of Australian society. On 9/11 in 2001, millions of people around the world stopped in their tracks as the World Trade Center collapsed. Consequently, the war on terror, the conflict in the Middle East, became the focal point in the US, across Europe and Australia. I recall 9/11 happened 2 weeks after I decided to put on the scarf, and I woke up that morning and my mum asked me, "Are you sure you want to wear your scarf today?" And at the time it was very experimental, and I said yeah, and I didn't understand why she'd asked me. And I walked down the street and a man in his car threw a water bottle at me and said, "Get off the street, you terrorist." And this was my first exposure to racism within Australia. The perspective of Muslims as a result became somewhat absent in the public realm of the representation, or rather the misrepresentation, of Muslims and Islam. However, there was a greater absence, and that was the voice of Muslim women in opposing the dominant and inaccurate portrayals of Islamic women throughout Australian television, books, and newspapers was muted or almost non-existent. You see, at times feeling alienated is motivation which encourages people to become more proactive in determining and in gaining fairer representation. And this has been the case for various Muslim women, including myself. Belonging to a minority which is continuously misrepresented in the mass media is one thing, but belonging to a minority within a minority, trying to advocate and work within the mass media, is entirely another. Growing up, I felt the full force of the media's misrepresentation of Muslim women and its toxic influences within the Australian public. Just last year, I was on the train and there was this vacant seat, and I decided to go for the seat, and a man came from behind me and pushed me against the train on the wall and, you know, went on a complete rant. We've seen all the videos on the internet and, you know, said stuff like, "I bought my camels here, I come here and work on the dole," and, you know, completely racist rant. And it made me realise that, okay, I thought it was getting better, but actually it's still there, but in a much more subtle way. My experiences, however, are unfortunately not exclusive to me. They are a shared reality for various Muslim women across the world, especially those who choose to adorn the headscarf. However, it's because of my life experiences that I've chosen the career path that I am in. Muslim women are not victims, and I am not a victim. Rather than disengaging from the media, I have consciously chosen to engage within it. The media is one of the greatest tools we have available to minority groups. It has the power to create monumental change, shift focus, and shape and reshape public opinion. It therefore cannot be ignored nor underestimated, and it would be foolish for one to disengage from the media. For the Muslim community, the mass media has proven to be an uncontrollable beast. For example, from the used and severely reused images of women in the burqa, to the patriarchal and violent discourse adopted by journalists to help describe our brothers, our fathers, and our uncles. So why engage in it? Let me give you an example. From my thesis, which I'm doing on Muslim women media advocacy post 9/11, I found that more often than not, journalists seek individuals within the community who are not necessarily representatives of the community. So for example, they might go for someone who's slightly more radical. This, for the journalists, enables them to have the shock factor and the controversial factor, which will sell the headline. But for the Muslim community, it's even a greater barrier in creating the opportunity of gaining better representation. But for me, it's the perfect opportunity to play a significant role. Because of my community contacts, my knowledge of the Muslim community politics, and believe me, there are Muslim community politics, coupled with my journalism, in my background in journalism, I have the ability to direct journalists and producers to the appropriate people who are spokespeople for the Muslim community. But it's not just the representation by the media, it's the media itself that has captured my attention. If you switch to any of the mainstream media networks like 7, 9 or 10, the face on the news is clearly not reflective of the multicultural society we find ourselves in. The standard newsreader, as I'm sure we've all noticed, has short, blonde or brunette hair, blue or green eyes, and most notably, white. I obviously do not fit this description, which is ironic considering I want to be a news anchor. So this is not a new observation, nor am I the first to grapple with this reality. However, limited progress has been made, and the White Australia policy seems to be the mainstream media's criteria for who does or doesn't make it on the news anchor chair. As a Muslim woman whose aim is to change, or at the very least make a shift in how all ethnic minorities are represented, it becomes increasingly disheartening when a nation that's democratic, like Australia, is far from being representative of its people, let alone a voice for those who were silenced. I have faced many challenges on varying degrees in my media journey thus far. Notwithstanding the challenges though, Muslim women, myself included, have managed to rise above it all and promote long-term achievements and reshifting the public discourse and beginning to reclaim agency over our identity and definition of what it means to be a Muslim woman. Just this year, my good friend Tamina Ansari, who's a journalist for ABC, became the first veiled news broadcast journalist on ABC. So I have achieved some milestones. For others, they may seem minor, but for me, they're quite significant. Like the time I had the opportunity to change the direction of a story from what one would argue was sensationalist to a more nuanced position, or the time I was asked to seek a contact and talent for a particular story that Channel 10 was working on. So in all these experiences, I was able to exercise something which I think is lacking when it comes to ethnic or reporting on ethnic minorities, and that's journalistic integrity. So, almost done. I want to become a journalist not simply because I belong to a minority or because the media is unbiased at times. I want to become a journalist because I genuinely love storytelling and I love sharing stories with people. Sincerity, trustworthiness, are not privileges that journalists stumble upon. Rather, they are rights granted by the story's subject. My journey thus far has just begun. And with any great dream, there will be challenges. I have no doubt that these challenges will push me to the boundary at times, but I have no doubt that I am capable of overcoming those challenges. Someone once told me, various people told me, and still tell me, that what I'm trying to achieve is not possible within this decade because, quote unquote, Australia is not ready for it. But Australian mainstream media won't improve overnight, nor will the representation of minority groups, but slowly and surely a shift is taking place, a shift where minorities are finally claiming back their stories, setting the agenda and taking charge of their identity. As for me, the community backlash interlaced with dissatisfaction from the media and various members, as well as the remnants of expectations, has made my media work very difficult. However, the commitment to my work and my genuine need for fairer media representation, I think, is a testament to my craving to see all minority groups get equal representation. I will become a journalist on national television where I don't have to make compromises. And I will become a journalist on national television whether or not Australia is ready for it. Thank you.